My brothers and sisters, I want you to hear me today. Hard times are not accidents. The storms you face, the struggles you endure, the tears you cry, they are not wasted. They are instruments in the hand of a mighty God, shaping you, molding you, preparing you for something greater than you could ever imagine. When life feels heavy, when trials feel endless, when you wonder if you will ever come out of the valley, remember this truth. God never allows pain without purpose. The very fire you think will destroy you is the same fire God will use to refine you. Hard times reveal what comfort hides. That simple truth carries enormous weight because it touches on the deepest reality of human growth and spiritual development. When life is easy and circumstances are smooth, we often live under the illusion that we are stronger, wiser, or more faithful than we truly are. Comfort has a way of covering up our weaknesses. It lulls us into thinking we are in control, that we can manage life on our own terms, and that our faith is solid simply because nothing has tested it. But the moment trials arrive, the mask of comfort is stripped away, and what lies underneath is exposed. This is not to shame us, but to awaken us. God allows seasons of difficulty so that the hidden parts of our hearts are brought to the surface, forcing us to confront the areas of pride, fear, doubt, or self-reliance that we didn't realize were there. Think of it like metal being tested by fire. When gold is heated, the impurities rise to the surface. They were always there, but they could not be seen until the fire revealed them. The heat doesn't create the weakness, it exposes it. In the same way, hard times bring to light the things comfort kept hidden. If we carried pride in our success, a financial setback reveals whether our trust was truly in God or in our bank account. If we had a shallow prayer life, a crisis will quickly expose how desperate we are for God's presence. If we believed we love people well, betrayal or rejection will reveal the true condition of our hearts. This exposure is not punishment, it is preparation. God wants us to see ourselves clearly so that we can be transformed. We cannot heal what we refuse to face. Trials act like mirrors, showing us our real reflection, not the one we pretend to have. They humble us, strip away illusions, and bring us back to a posture of dependence. It is in that posture, on our knees, that God does his deepest work. He builds real faith, the kind that does not collapse under pressure, but grows stronger through it. Consider the example of Peter, one of Jesus' closest disciples. Peter was bold, confident, and quick to declare his loyalty. He told Jesus, "Even if everyone else falls away, I never will." In comfort, Peter thought his faith was unshakable. But when the hard time came, when Jesus was arrested and the pressure mounted, Peter denied him 3 times. That moment revealed what comfort had hidden Peter's fear, his insecurity, and the limits of his courage. Yet that failure became the ground where God rebuilt Peter into a man of unshakable faith. On the other side of that trial, Peter was no longer relying on his own strength, but on God's power. And he became the leader who helped launch the early church. In our own lives, we face similar tests. A person may think they are patient until a season of waiting stretches far longer than expected. They may believe they are forgiving until someone wounds them deeply. They may assume their joy is steady until loss and grief try to drown it. Only then do we realize that our faith must go deeper than words and surface emotions. Trials force us to lean not on ourselves but on God. And once we do, we discover that He is stronger than we imagined, more faithful than we believed, and closer than we ever felt in times of comfort. So when you face hardship, do not despise it. See it as a gift in disguise, a mirror held up to your soul. It may hurt to see what is revealed, but remember, God cannot heal what remains hidden. He uses the pressure, the fire, the storm to draw out what is weak, so He can replace it with His strength. What comfort hides. Hard times will always reveal, and what is revealed, God can redeem. Hard times are God's classroom. This is not something we like to hear, because no one wants to sit in a classroom of pain, loss, or struggle. Yet if we are honest, the lessons that shape us most deeply rarely come in moments of ease. It is in the seasons of discomfort, the nights filled with tears, and the valleys of uncertainty that God becomes the ultimate teacher. Pain carries a power that pleasure cannot match, because when life hurts, our ears open wider, our hearts soften, and our spirits become ready to learn. When everything is going well, we can fall into the trap of believing we don't need guidance. Comfort makes us self-reliant, convinced we already know enough to handle whatever comes. But the minute the ground shakes under our feet, our posture changes. We pray differently when we are desperate. We listen more closely when we don't know what to do next. And in those moments, God begins to instruct us in ways that no textbook or comfortable experience ever could. He uses hard times to grow endurance, to build wisdom, and to strengthen character, because those are qualities that only trials can truly produce. Think about an athlete training for a marathon. If they only ever ran short distances at a slow pace, they would never be prepared for the real test of endurance. It's the long, painful runs, the days when their muscles ache and their lungs burn, that actually build the strength to finish the race. The hardship of training is the classroom that makes victory possible. In the same way, God allows us to walk through circumstances that stretch us, that demand more faith, more patience, more perseverance than we think we can give. He is not trying to break us. He is training us for greater assignments we cannot yet see. One of the clearest examples of this truth is found in the life of Joseph. As a young man, Joseph had dreams of greatness, but he had no idea how much preparation those dreams required. Betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and thrown into prison. Joseph's life looked like a series of misfortunes, but every hardship was a lesson in God's classroom. In slavery, Joseph learned responsibility. In prison, he learned leadership and humility. In betrayal, he learned dependence on God alone. These were not easy lessons, but they were necessary. By the time Joseph stood before Pharaoh and was elevated to second in command over Egypt, he was not the same young dreamer who had once boasted of visions. He was a man of character, wisdom, and resilience, shaped by the classroom of suffering. And because he had been trained by hardship, he was ready to carry the weight of saving nations during famine. In our own lives, hard times often feel like punishment, but in reality, they are preparation. The struggles you face today may be equipping you with patience you will need tomorrow. The loss you endure may be teaching you compassion for someone else's pain. The delay you hate may be building endurance for a bigger opportunity ahead. None of it is wasted because God is intentional with every lesson. So when you find yourself in the midst of trials, do not assume you are abandoned. Instead, recognize that you are in God's classroom. The lessons may feel heavy, but they are shaping you into someone stronger, wiser, and more resilient than you were before. And one day, when you step into the purpose God has prepared for you, you will look back and realize that every hardship was part of the training that made you ready. Hard times position us for purpose. That statement may sound strange when you are in the middle of pain, but it is one of the greatest truths about how God works in the lives of His people. Often, the very thing you believe is going to destroy you becomes the very thing that pushes you into the destiny you were created for. The valley that feels unbearable today may be the exact road God is using to take you to higher ground. What looks like a setback is often a setup. What feels like loss can actually be the doorway to a life you could not have reached without first passing through difficulty. Purpose is not discovered in comfort. Comfort breeds complacency, and complacency rarely produces growth. But hardship has a way of moving us from where we are to where we need to be. Trials redirect us, refine us, and ultimately realign us with God's plan. They push us into rooms we never would have entered, introduce us to people we never would have met, and shape us with qualities we never would have developed otherwise. In God's divine plan, nothing is wasted. Even the things that look like they are working against us are actually working for us. Think about the story of Joseph. As a teenager, Joseph had dreams that God would one day raise him up to a place of influence. But nothing about his journey looked like those dreams were coming true. His brothers betrayed him, threw him into a pit, and sold him into slavery. Later, he was falsely accused and imprisoned. From the outside, Joseph's life looked like one disaster after another. Yet each of those hard times was positioning him for his ultimate purpose. If his brothers had never sold him, he never would have ended up in Egypt. If he had not been in Potiphar's house, he would not have learned leadership. If he had not been thrown into prison, he never would have met the cupbearer, who later connected him to Pharaoh. Every painful step was part of the pathway to his destiny. When Joseph finally stood as second in command over Egypt, saving nations from famine, he looked back and could say to his brothers, "What you meant for evil, God meant for good." The pit led to the palace, not in spite of the hard times, but because of them. In our own lives, the same principle holds true. A lost job may open the door to a career that aligns with your calling. A broken relationship may teach you lessons that prepare you for the right partnership. A season of illness may position you to encourage and minister to others in ways you never imagined. These experiences hurt, and often while we are in them, they make no sense. But God is weaving them into a larger story. He is not just concerned with getting us through the trial. He is concerned with positioning us exactly where He wants us to be so that our lives accomplish their purpose. It is important not to despise the valley. The valley may feel dark, lonely, and endless, but it may also be the very road to your destiny. If the Israelites had never faced the Red Sea, they would not have witnessed God's power in parting it. What looked like a dead end became the stage for deliverance. In the same way, the obstacles you are facing today may be the very stage where God intends to reveal His glory through your life. So the next time you find yourself in a pit, a prison, or a place you never wanted to be, hold on to the truth that God is not wasting your pain. He is positioning you for something greater. When the story is finished, you will see that the trial that tried to break you was the same trial that made you ready for your purpose. Hard times make us useful to others. At first, that statement might sound unfair because when you are hurting, the last thing you want to think about is how your pain could serve someone else. Yet that is one of the beautiful mysteries of how God works. He never wastes a wound. Every scar you carry has the potential to be a testimony. Every valley you walk through equips you to walk alongside someone else who feels lost in theirs. Struggles that nearly broke you often become the very stories that lift someone else out of despair. What you survive does not stay with you alone. It becomes a tool in the hands of God to bring healing and encouragement to others. We live in a world where people are constantly searching for authenticity. They don't just want polished words or surface level encouragement. They want to know that someone has walked where they are walking and still made it through. That's why your hard times matter. When you have been through depression and God has carried you, you can speak to someone else who feels hopeless in a way no textbook or theory ever could. When you've endured financial hardship and experienced God's provision, You can encourage a struggling family with real conviction. When you've grieved the loss of someone you loved and still found peace, you become living proof that God's comfort is real. Hard times expand your capacity for empathy, compassion, and genuine connection with others. Because you're no longer speaking from ideas. You're speaking from experience. This is exactly what happened with the Apostle Paul. He endured shipwrecks, imprisonment, beatings, rejection, and countless hardships. Yet he wrote to the Corinthians about how his suffering taught him to rely not on himself but on God, and in turn, how the comfort he received from God enabled him to comfort others. He essentially said, "The same God who lifted me out of my darkest hours will also lift you. And I can tell you that because I've lived it." Paul's scars became a source of strength for others. His trials gave weight to his testimony. Without those hardships, his words might have been inspirational, but because of them, his words carried undeniable authority and life-giving power. Think of it like this. A person who has never sailed through a storm can talk about the sea, but only the one who has endured waves and wind can truly guide another sailor through the danger. Hard times make you that guide. They shape you into someone who doesn't just speak theory, but embodies hope. Your survival becomes evidence that someone else can survive too. Let's take a simple, relatable example. Imagine a person who battled cancer for years. They went through chemo, lost their hair, endured pain, and fought through fear. By God's grace, they survived. Later, they meet someone just diagnosed with the same disease. That new patient is overwhelmed, terrified, and uncertain about the future. In that moment, the survivor's story becomes medicine. Their words carry weight. I've been there. I know the nights of fear. I know the weakness. But I also know God is faithful, and you can make it through. That testimony can give more comfort than any doctor's statistics, because it comes from someone who has walked the same dark road and come out on the other side. That is why your hard times are not just about you. They are about the people you will one day help. God turns your pain into purpose and your scars into strength for others. He makes your life a living message that says, if God did it for me, He can do it for you too. And when you encourage someone else out of your own struggles, your suffering finds new meaning. It becomes a bridge of hope for someone still standing in the fire. Hard times draw us closer to God Himself. This truth is often discovered in the valleys of life rather than the mountaintops. When everything is going well, when our needs are met and our plans seem to be unfolding smoothly, it is easy to take God's presence for granted. We can fall into the trap of assuming we are close to Him simply because we acknowledge Him in passing prayers or Sunday worship. But when life breaks us, when the ground beneath us shakes, and when what we thought we could not live without is suddenly gone, That is when we discover who our hearts truly lean on. In those moments, God strips away the illusion that other things can sustain us, and He shows us that He alone is the anchor that will never move. Hard times often leave us with fewer distractions. The job, the money, the relationships, the comfort, the routines, all of these can easily become substitutes for intimacy with God. We lean on them for security, for joy, for identity. But when they are shaken, when they fail us, or when they are removed, we are left face to face with the reality that none of them were ever enough to begin with. And in that emptiness, we often hear God's voice more clearly than ever before. The tears that fall in the night become the prayers that draw us into His arms. The silence of unanswered questions becomes the space where we learn to trust His presence rather than just His explanations. This closeness to God that hard times bring is not simply about emotional comfort. It is about transformation. In the fire of trials, we begin to know God, not just as a distant figure, but as a living, sustaining presence. He becomes not just the God of our Sunday songs, but the God of our midnight cries. His word becomes more than just ink on a page. It becomes breath for our weary souls. In trials, the promises of Scripture take on new meaning because we cling to them as if our lives depend on it. And often, our peace truly does. Consider the example of Job. Job was a man who had everything: wealth, family, health, and reputation. Then, in a short span, he lost it all. His friends offered explanations. His wife urged him to give up, and his questions multiplied. But through all of it, Job clung to God. At one point, he said, "Though He slay me, yet will I trust Him." Job did not understand why his world had collapsed, but he refused to let go of God. In the end, when God revealed Himself, Job declared, "My ears had heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you." Notice that transformation. Before the trial, Job knew about God. After the trial, Job knew God personally, deeply, and intimately. His pain became the doorway into a closer relationship with the one who never left his side. In our own lives, the same reality unfolds. A person may think they are strong in faith until they face the loss of a loved one. In that grief, they discover God as the comforter in a way they never had before. Another may lose financial stability and, for the first time, learn what it means to truly depend on God as provider. Someone else may walk through illness and find God's presence more real in a hospital room than it ever felt in a church building. These experiences are not pleasant, but they are precious because they bring us to the heart of God. So, when trials come, and they will, do not only see them as seasons of loss. See them as opportunities to lean into God more fully than ever before. When the world shakes, let it drive you to the one who cannot be shaken. When all else fails, you will find that God is not just enough. He is everything. And in the end, the closeness you gain with Him in hard times will be the treasure that outlasts every trial. Beloved, the fire is not forever, but the faith it produces will last forever. Trust the process, embrace the journey, and watch how God turns your trial into triumph. Remember, your pain has a purpose, and your struggle is shaping your story. God is not breaking you. He's making you.